The movie begins on a Halloween night in the town of Vernon, where the narrator recalls the infamous Sweet 16 killer. On October 27, 1987, Tiffany Clark was murdered at her home and found in the garage on the night of her Sweet 16 birthday. 2 days later, Tiffany's friend Marissa Song was murdered in her parents' cabin, and 2 days after that on Halloween night, Heather Hernandez was murdered in a parking lot. They were all stabbed 16 times. The killer was never found, but according to the eyewitnesses, the killer wore all black and a mask, which became infamous in Vernon, where every Halloween, people dress up like the murderer. We then see Chris Dubasage, who is the only one who still investigates the murders as the cops give up, and he offers a murder tour while people wear the killer's mask. Teenager Jamie Hughes is getting ready to go to a concert with her best friend Amelia Creston. Her mother Pam tries to convince her to stay at home and celebrate Halloween with her and her dad Blake like every year. Jamie coldly brushes Pam off, but Pam is still worried as it's the 35th anniversary of the murders, and Pam was friends with the victims. Jamie promises that she will return before the curfew, and says they can track her location and she got pepper spray and a rape alarm, before reminding her she has been taking self-defense classes since 7. Pam finally agrees, but only on the condition that her father Blake will drop her at the concert and drive back home. Pam gets a message from Chris, whom Blake finds to be a creepy guy but always admires his newscaster father Norm. Jamie stops by to pick up her friend Amelia, and Blake greets her mom Lauren, who is a geek, but ended up doing a lame job and even had to work during Halloween. Meanwhile, Pam is offering candies to the kids who showed up for trick or treat. Once they are gone, a man shows up wearing the Sweet 16 killer's mask. Pam thinks it's a crude joke until the guy takes out a knife. She promptly locks him out and tries to call the police, but the killer breaks in. Pam fights him back, but the killer overpowers her and throws her away. Luckily, Pam finds a pepper spray and uses it on him. She then quickly runs into the kitchen to grab a knife, and threatens the killer, and this causes him to leave, only to attack her from the door behind, stabbing her to death. Her body is found by 2 kids before the cops arrive at the scene. Jamie is left crying in her room, regretting the last thing she said to her mom. At school, Principal Doug Summers offers his condolences to Jamie, while Sheriff Kara Lim suspects Blake and thinks he knows something, as she found many texts between her mom and Chris. Jamie shoots back at her, saying she is as useless as her sheriff father was in catching the killer back in 1987. Jamie later joins Amelia at the school's science fair, where her project is a time machine, based on the designs of her mother Lauren. While it is not finished, Amelia has the travel date set to October 27, 1987, which is the night of Tiffany's murder when the killing spree started. Late that day, Jamie listens to Chris's podcast on the Sweet 16 killer and decides to meet him. Blake comes over to check on her. Jamie asks if her mom is friends with Chris, but Blake denies it as Pam is only helping him to find the killer since the cops gave up long ago. Blake reveals Chris had a crush on her mom when they were still friends, and they didn't get together until they finished college. Blake thinks it happened for their best, as they would have never lasted if they got together in high school. The following day, Jamie meets Chris hoping that they might find the killer. Chris shows her a note that was left in Pam's locker in high school by the killer, warning her she was going to be next. Jamie returns to join Amelia at the fair, and the killer appears and chases after her. Jamie hides in the photo booth where the time machine is, and the killer activates it by stabbing the control panel. Jamie time travels to 1987. She arrives at the high school and enrolls herself as an exchange student to look for her mom. Jamie is sent to an indoor court, where she sees Tiffany, Marissa, and Heather. Before she can find her mom, the coach forces her to play dodgeball, and her group is being brutally thrashed by the opponents. Jamie finally gets to see young Pam, who turns out to be the meanest girl at the school, and hits Jamie repeatedly with multiple balls, making her bleed. Jamie learns her mom's group is called Molly's, because they like to dress like Molly Ringwald. As they are leaving, Jamie introduces herself to the girls and tries to find a way to get Tiffany to cancel her Sweet 16 party for that night, but just gets rudely dismissed by Pam. Jamie then finds Sheriff Dennis Lim, Kara's father, and tries to warn him that a murder is going to happen. She then goes to find the young Lauren, who is a science geek. Jamie explains her situation like the plot of Back to the Future and how she needs to find the killer and return home as soon as possible. She convinces Lauren by showing her her iPhone and then taking her to the photo booth where the machine is. Lauren gets her tools to try and fix it. Back in the present, Blake is worried that Jamie has gone missing, and he suspects Chris had something to do with it. Amelia says Jamie used her time machine and has gone to 1987, but no one believes her. Later, Jamie and Lauren go to Tiffany's party, but get stopped by Randy Finkel, who is Jamie's gym teacher in the present, and he is joined by young Kara, who is a major stoner here. They bar them from entering and call them losers. The young Doug is also rejected from going in. Jamie finds a way to sneak in with the help of Doug, where she sees young Blake and finds him hot until she learns he is her father and gets grossed, and he is currently dating Tiffany. Jamie then approaches the Mollies, even though they think she's weird, but Randy ends up throwing her out again. When Jamie gets back inside, she witnesses Blake and Tiffany fighting, as Blake gets to know that she slept with Eddie Royal, who is a super famous rock star that Jamie is a fan of. Jamie then unwittingly convinces her to hook up with Eddie. Tiffany then goes to make out with Eddie in her parents' bedroom. Meanwhile, Jamie starts going all around the house looking for Tiffany. She then remembers her body was found in the garage, so she heads to check on it, only to find Marissa, who is making out with a guy. Meanwhile, Tiffany went to the washroom, and by the time she returned, Eddie was gone. She hears a sound and thinks he is hiding, but the killer appears from the closet wearing a mask, and stabs her multiple times, killing her. Jamie and Pam arrive too late to find her lying dead on the waterbed. Jamie and Lauren accompany a traumatized Pam home, where Jamie sees how Pam is rude to her mother, and realizes why her grandmother never visits them. Amelia sees her time machine and figures Jamie was sent back in time. She gets help from Chris, as they find new crime scene photos of Tiffany's murder, since they remember her being found in the garage unlike now where it was her parents' bedroom. Amelia also notices a message on the waterbed from Jamie saying stab the machine, cluing her in that another metal conductor is needed to make the machine work. Jamie returns to school with the girls and learns about a student called Fat Trish who died after driving drunk. Trish had a brother, Damon, who works at the fair and is known to creep others out. Jamie later joins Pam, Marissa, and Heather for Marissa's birthday party, and arrives at the same cabin where Marissa was murdered. Jamie tries to warn them of the consequences, but they ignore her. Soon, they were joined by Randy, Kara, and Blake. Jamie also tries to prevent Pam from hooking up with Blake so soon for fear of messing something up in the future. Randy finds Jamie is ruining their party, so he locks her out. She sees the window open and tries to warn Kara. Jamie then sees the killer going after Heather instead of Marissa. Jamie manages to get to Pam, while Heather wakes up to see the killer and runs away. The killer chases Heather and stabs her to death in the living room. Jamie and Blake manage to fight the killer off and send him running. Lauren later tells Jamie that her phone, which is going to help her return to her period, is running low on battery, and if it gets to zero, Jamie will be stuck in 1987 forever. Jamie then sees Damon, suspecting him to be the killer. She goes into his van and finds the video game cartridges everywhere. Damon catches Jamie and tells her he is not a killer, but he does have an interest in wanting to develop games. At the fair, Jamie sees the ride, the quantum drop, and thinks it can be an alternate source of power. The rest of the group shows up at the fair, and they decide to take down the killer. They suggest Marissa get to the dollhouse of horror and pretend like she is there to meet someone, and they can cover her when the killer shows up. In the present, Amelia is closer to fixing her machine. Marissa is inside the haunted house, and the rest of the group has taken their positions. The killer shows up a few moments later. He goes looking for Marissa, but he finds Jamie hiding and attacks her. He chases after her as she runs away, and the rest of the group attacks the killer, but he takes them down, and when he is about to kill Jamie, Kara impales him from behind with a scythe. Jamie unmasks the killer, revealing him to be Doug. They wonder why Doug wants them dead, and Jamie looks at his locket having a picture of Fat Trish. Pam then remembers that Doug was Trish's boyfriend. Marissa then realizes that Doug knew about a sleepover they had where the Mollies invited Trish over and got her drunk because they wanted to know if she really had sex with their coach. After crying in Tiffany's room, Trish drove home and got into her fatal accident. Jamie starts to blame Pam, thinking she would allow Trish to do that, but Pam says that she was in a fight with Tiffany at that point and was not at the sleepover. She also had no clue about the note that Chris had shown Jamie. Moments later, another killer shows up and slashes Marissa's throat, forcing everyone to run. Back in the present, Lauren finds Amelia knocked out, and the time machine is gone. Jamie runs toward the quantum drop, and the killer chases them and takes a moment to stab Norm on live TV. Jamie and Lauren get to the quantum drop. By the time they activate the time machine, the killer jumps in. Jamie convinces Lauren to leave as she wants to take the killer to her timeline. Just then, Pam shows up and attacks the killer. Pam recalls having a vision where she was supposed to be on the quantum drop for a big moment involving her. Jamie remembers that Pam got to know she was pregnant in the quantum drop ride. The duo then attack the killer, but he stabs Pam, so Jamie ejects her from the ride and she takes away his mask. The killer is revealed to be Chris, who killed Pam and his dad to kickstart a new killing spree so he can profit from it with his podcast. He attempts to kill Jamie as the time machine activates, but Jamie shoots him with Lauren's nail gun and kicks him off, causing Chris to explode into pink mist. Jamie returns to the present and is delighted to find her mom alive. Lauren and Amelia show up moments later, letting them know that their efforts to save Jamie worked. Lauren privately talks to Jamie outside, letting her know that a lot has changed since she altered the past, so she gives her a notebook to check in on all the differences. A young man shows up at the house, revealed to be Jamie's 34-year-old brother. As Pam and Blake get together immediately, her brother is the one named Jamie, and now her name is Colette. Jamie also realizes her mom also has a better relationship with her mom. She goes through Lauren's notebook to learn her older brother has a husband and a daughter. Lauren has a better job as a bioengineer, and Amelia is still Jamie's best friend and a genius. Randy became the school principal, and Kara is now chief of police, and much happier with her job. Damon became a video game developer and started an anti-bullying organization in honor of Trish. Eddie Royal went from a hard rocker in a band called Killer Instinct to a waterbed away because that's how close he was to death. Chris is still alive and is at a monastery in India since his father's murder traumatized him, but Lauren still keeps tabs on him. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.